Hello and welcome to Through a Therapist's Eyes. I guess we're going to start doing, Mr. Graves called this a Mental Health Monday if we keep on with these Monday releases, right? Welcome to a new week on Mental Health Monday. How about that?
Sounds good. I like the sound of it.
All right, so this is Through a Therapist's Eyes. I am Chris Gazdick and he is Craig Graves. I am a mental health and substance abuse therapist. He is an unbeatable mind life coach. I think I might be selfish, Craig, and highlight the re-understanding of emotions. Do you know anything about that?
I don't.
You don't? Through a Therapist's Eyes, re-understanding emotions and becoming your best self.
Oh, that's your book. Yeah, that's your book. I got you.
Yeah, we got it out now. It's out and available for everybody on, I don't know, Books A Million and, Barnes & Noble and Amazon.com. Some cool things out there. And I'm already starting to get some feedback on that, Craig. It's kind of neat. I think people are kind of liking the little short versions of each chapter. As almost like a little reference guide. And
yeah, it makes it easy to read for sure.
Yeah, it's been neat getting some feedback about that. So if you haven't gotten that, check it out, catch up with us, and keep me informed on what you think. So this is not the delivery of therapy services in any way. We have a better help option on the website, throughatherapist'seyes.com. We want to click on the counseling tab. It is a way to support the show and get therapy out of your own home, wherever you might be. I think probably literally around the world. Is that right? You think that's probably a worldwide deal?
You know what? I wish Neil were here because I don't know the answer to that. It could be.
Yeah, we're missing Neil. As a matter of fact, little announcement that we are getting our sea legs with the new formats and stuff that we've got, guys. I know Neil was actually out. I'm not going to announce anything. He had to be down for a little bit. I forgot to ask him what he wanted to say about that. But so we actually even went recently a whole week without shows, and that's kind of what happened there. So we're getting our sea legs and getting that together. So we definitely want feedback on the new format and how we're going. So this is the human emotional experience. And we're going to keep on figuring this thing out together with Mr. Chris Lowrance. And he is an amazing guy as I've gotten to know him through doing these shows. 3 decades of policing in the local precinct. He was a sergeant. And he has, if you didn't hear our shows last week, you have got to push rewind. Just stop right now. Push the stop button and click back a few shows because he has absolutely, in a hugely courageous way, honored us with the experiences that he has had, sharing his experiences in policing and how all that has been for him. And we're going to kind of get into the health implications, the mental health implications, particularly after policing. And we're going to kind of go a little bit tomorrow on needed changes. We might have just done all 6 days on that one, honestly, with mental health changes needed. What do you think about that, Chris?
I think it's been covered.
It's been covered. And then we're going to kind of just, maybe talk a little bit about the societal pressures and challenges that are out there with stuff. So that's what's in store. Chris, let me just kind of throw it over to you. Any other updates or to your introduction there? This is the second Monday, spending a little bit of time on that, what your experience has been. You've done some time on the SWAT units.
Well, I started in 1992 after I graduated college out at University of North Carolina, Charlotte. I started on patrol. I was on patrol for 3 years, and then I became a canine handler. I handled a dog for 5 years.
The doggies. I love the doggies.
Yes. Was promoted to sergeant in 2000, and I decided to stay at that position for the rest of my career.
Okay.
It was a financial decision.
Gotcha. So. Here's an odd question. It just pops in my head in the conversations that we're having. So you've got a lot of experience managing people and seeing the different roles in policing and whatnot. What do you think about a notion that, like I said, this just popped in my head. This happens on a live show, right? Being a dog handler, you did that for 3 years, you said?
5 years.
5 years. Is that a different emotional experience in policing than, I'll just kind of clump it all together and being, not being a canine officer?
It's definitely different. You enter a track situation with your canine,
right?
And it's a lot of times it's you and your canine,
right?
So there's no one to rely on. Your backup is your canine.
Yep.
So, like I said earlier, and one of the other shows was if anybody ever says they weren't scared, they're lying.
Right.
So you have times that they're a little more trying as a canine handler. The different things you experience. I mean, you learn to keep a cap on your drink in the car. If you don't, you have dog hair in it.
Right.
So,
what I was just wondering there is, we have therapy dogs. We have pets and relationships with animals and stuff. And I wondered, just out loud, I'm wondering, if that has an emotional mental health impact in having that sort of relationship with the dog. You ever thought of that?
Well, my first dog really didn't have that relationship with because, just to be blunt, he was mean as hell.
Oh dear.
My second dog was a lot different.
Yeah.
Our canine unit at the department that I retired from has grown tremendously over the last 20, 25 years. It's a totally different canine unit than when I served. Your attachment to your dog, they do become, you become attached to them. It's not really someone to talk to in the car, but it's somebody, something in the car with you. And 12-hour shifts get long.
And are usually people alone in their car?
Oh yes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Am I not correct in saying early on in policing where they're not paired up?
Well, in some departments do. Some of the larger departments, New York City, maybe they ride dual officers in a car. But here in Gaston County, all the departments ride solo officers in each car. Unless you got a trainee. If you got a trainee, you'll have a field training officer riding as well as the officers that's training.
What do you think about riding dual?
Well, I think there'd be pros and cons to it.
Okay.
If you end up on a situation where an arrest is made, you've tied up 2 officers to go to the courthouse, to go before the magistrate, to do the processing, the booking at the jail. If you've got 2 cars, one of the officers leaves, you still got that other officer able to answer calls for service.
Huh. And you're trying for efficiency. I guess my mental health thing is I'd like people to be together.
Yeah, they can
so
talk to
that,
somebody, right?
Yes!
Yeah.
For crying out loud, man, that seems to me... I just remember as a kid that's it seems like there was always 2, and that's
Double
2.
Starsky and Hutch.
Yeah, right, yeah.
But Ponch and John were separate.
Oh, were they?
Yeah, they were 2 motorcycles. Chips.
Well, okay, yeah, but they were always together, man. They always riding down the highway, one on each side of the line.
Andy and Barney were separate.
Well, that's true too. All right. Well, I might advocate for both of them. What do you think generally, Craig? And I'm really wanting to tap on your brain a little bit, as well. So chime in here as you feel appropriate. And Chris, I mean, maybe kind of beginning to tap, particularly after policing. And it might even start with like after hours when you're off duty, particularly in your mind, Chris. And then Craig, sort of what you would think of as the mental health aspects. Let's just let your brains kind of go for a minute and see, kind of what you come up with. I mean, just from your own brain, what are the mental health effects of policing?
I'm not a police officer. I don't know.
What would you imagine, though, really? Just let your brains move around on that.
Well, everyone says, you don't take the job home with you.
Mm-hmm.
Leave the job at work. It's not possible.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has a bad day at work. They bring it home. You got a spouse, your children. Maybe you're not in the best mood. Maybe you can explain, your boss man did this or your boss man did that. You really can't tell your 10-year-old daughter that you were involved in a shooting that day.
Right.
My younger 2 children, they don't know of any of the shootings that I was involved with. I haven't shared that with them.
Mm-hmm.
That they're not old enough to process that.
Yeah, they're a little young.
Yeah. So, people say leave it at work, but you can't. Because if you leave it at work, your spouse doesn't know why you're acting the way you're acting.
And
maybe they can understand a little bit if you share with them what happens.
And I think they can, to any men and women listening out there, we can handle it. I think that people can handle it. You'd be surprised. And here's why. I'll be curious what your brain does with this, Chris. Well, people a lot of times ask me, Chris, how do you stand that? You talk to people all day long, right? With, people talking about their problems. And, I mean, that would drive me crazy, they ask me. Like, how do you do that? And to me, one of the things that I've always done with that is, yeah, I'm dealing with a lot of trauma. I'm dealing with marriage fights and just an enormous amount of pain a lot of times that people are experiencing. But, Chris, it's not my pain, right? You get me talking about my problems, and Lord knows anybody that knows me, Craig, I have them, right?
Maybe it's not always your pain.
Right?
But you experience the pain of a child.
Absolutely.
The situation that the child is in, or the female, or not just female, even male, domestic violence type situations, to where there's a reason that they can't get out of it, and you wish that you could help them get out of it.
Absolutely.
You carry some of that pain with you.
Oh, believe me, every time I go home from work, I wash my hands or I take this armor that I'm wearing right here. I can't wait to get these clothes off. It's been a very, very long day. right? We're recording after full 8 hours of therapy that I've done today. But my point is, when you share that with me and you're feeling your emotion or your identification with being a parent and dealing with that on the job and whatnot, that's your experience, that you're experiencing the full breadth of that emotion. And when you tell me, I don't have that full breadth of that emotion. I may have my own. Now, you're dealing with trauma on a kid, and I'm a parent.
Or you have the perception from TV.
All sorts of things, right? But my point is that police officers, men and women in the military, and things that you can share with your spouse is not receiving all the full energy. They're receiving like a tenth, unless it triggers them in some way, which sometimes that happens. It happens for counselors. If I'm molested as a kid, I know that when I'm dealing with molestation, I either have to refer that or be able to be in a place that I can facilitate myself. And if I can't facilitate myself, I'm going to refer. We're trained. We're taught that. So the point is that you can really dump that off without fear of harming the other person, not anywhere near the fear that I think people have in harming the other person. And the spouse needs to know, as you said.
And I think my wife, it's probably been a year and a half ago, she actually witnessed a homicide.
Yeah, you were telling me about that.
Yeah, she witnessed a homicide, and actually the suspect vehicle left. It was a kind of a drive-by shooting type situation, and she went to the scene, and the man that had been shot, she held his head, and she called me on the phone, and we just lived a short distance from where it occurred, so I got there about the same time the city police did. And the experience that she had with that and the emotions that she had to deal with, I think she understood a little bit more of what life as a police officer is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because you have a context a little bit, and I just want to blow apart the fear that I think people have, the very genuine fear of not wanting to injure another person by what I've experienced today. I mean, you might have had a decapitation or some crazy thing. You don't necessarily have to give the details of that, but you could say, hey, this was a really rough day and somebody really got hurt bad today and it's really on my mind. That's a whole lot better than, hey, honey, how are you? I'm fine. Yep. How was your day? I'm fine.
Because you can't really go home and say, yeah, honey, I picked skull out of my boots today.
Right.
There's a fine line between what you share and what you don't.
And there's also the reality of kids and on the appropriate level and the adult versus kid level and all that kind of stuff. But I don't like the answers of just fine. It's been a really tough day and I've got bad things on my mind. If that's all you can say, then that's great. That will help out marriages, because marriages oftentimes with first responders struggle.
Oh, it's the divorce rate in law enforcement is extremely high.
Right. And these are some of the reasons. These are some of the mental health implications.
I think generally speaking, divorce rates are probably a little better than 50%. In law enforcement, I'd dare to say it's up in the 70s.
Yeah. I don't know the statistics, but this isn't a stat show, but that sounds right on par with what my training would show.
I know more guys that's divorced and females in the department that's divorced than they have stayed married.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's not just one marriage; it's multiple marriages.
Yeah. Divorce rates in mental health are pretty higher than average as well. Because we're not dealing with the internal stuff very, very well. Craig, I don't want to totally let you off the hook, man. As you're listening to us back and forth here a little bit, what's your brain doing with that kind of stuff, and how are you kind of receiving this stuff?
Just kind of taking it in, man. I mean, I guess you really can't take all that stuff home with you. It's hard for somebody else to understand some of the things that you've probably been through and where you're coming from, like picking skull out of your boots, right?
Yeah. Let's transition a little bit to the after policing and whatnot, right? Police One is a really cool. I was really impressed. You said you've heard of it before, right?
I've been on their site. They have a great site.
It really is. I kind of backed my own thoughts up with this whole prep for this show with a little bit more than average Google searching and stuff. And I got to say, I mean, the people over at www.policeone.com, they seem to have just really impressive information out there that I was a little bit surprised by, and a lot from a mental health perspective. So in this article, they were talking about after law enforcement, kind of trying to help men and women in policing transition. I think it's a quote. Don't hold me to the quote, but they're talking about at some point, officers must be prepared to become civilians. A loss of police power, I thought that was an interesting way to put it. A loss of police power and a feeling that one is no longer part of the cop family strongly accompanies the change. To leave this interpersonal web of protection is not easy and is likened to removing an integral part of your personality, right? In research conducted by police psychologist and author J.M. Violante, an officer commented, quote unquote, "It's like I belonged in a big club. I made my mark. I was one of the guys. I did my job. Everyone in the station respects you. Suddenly, all that's gone, and you're on the outside looking in. I felt so different. I called the guys in almost every day to see if they still related to me in some way. I visited the station, wondering what was going on and wanting to be a part of the action. Somehow, it wasn't the same. I wasn't one of them anymore. It's hard to explain. I left, but I couldn't let go of this strong attachment," unquote. I thought that was pretty powerful.
It's pretty point on.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is. It's such a long time in law enforcement. It's a defining factor in who you are. It defines the person that you are, your thought processes. My wife and I, we often joke about our kids, that, well, y'all never going to get to do anything because dad's a cop, mom's social worker. And we see all the bad stuff, and but you can't keep your kids in a bubble.
No.
You have to let them live.
Right.
But it is a defining factor in who you are for such a large part of your life. It's hard to let it go. I haven't let it completely go, staying on as a reserve police officer. Still have a lot of friends in the department. But in the short time that I've been gone, there's people that's hired, new faces that I have no idea who they are. Mm-hmm. It doesn't change because you leave. You have to live your life. There's a lot of life to live after law enforcement. That's the part that you really should be enjoying.
And I submit that that's tough because of the residual effects, the complicated, compounded realities of, I love, as you put it, I will take that with me, Chris. By the way, all those little pieces that you pick up, each pebble has a cost and a weight to it. And that residual compound trauma effect on an individual person, and then, after policing for whatever reason, you kind of cut off, from the unfortunate reality that those folks in the station or police house or wherever were your only support. And that's not good.
That's your friends.
That's your friends.
That's your friends. That's your peer support group.
Right. And I want to extend that out because there are suggestions on Police One. We'll go through these a little bit. Use family and friends as support structures. I couldn't agree with that more. That's what I was kind of saying.
But most of your friends you just left.
Yeah, well, get new ones.
Yeah.
You got to get new ones.
You do.
These transitions in life, which if anybody listening to this and knows anybody in retirement of any sort, really, let alone policing. But Craig, you remember when we did the show, on making friends? I think that was one of the big. Yeah,
I remember that one.
Right, that's important here, right?
Yes.
Right, you have to be able to get supports.
Yeah, I've been fortunate in, I've got a couple lifelong friends that's, the people in your life that know where all your skeletons live.
Those
are
valuable.
I have a few of those, and my family has been supportive. My parents are both still living. They've supported me tremendously on my bike ride. My dad thinks I'm crazy. But, I have a support system. Some officers that retire, they don't have that support system. So quite often they turn to drinking or some kind of, I won't call it a habit.
Negative coping mechanisms.
Negative coping mechanisms,
Right?
exactly.
Buying stuff you can't afford. I tell you, there's a lot of sexual acting out and pornography. Mm-hmm. There is absolutely the alcohol, and of course nowadays we got the whole weed thing.
Sure. It's coming.
And just like therapists are people, guess what? Police officers are people too. And those are a lot of realities. Does that sound fair?
That's perfect.
And so they do. They've got some really cool suggestions. I was pretty stoked with what's on Police One. Use department related or local mental health services, right? They say in quotes, "You're only as sick as your secrets." That was a cool statement, right? You're only as sick as your secrets, the things that you have locked up that nobody knows. I mean, that dude was from Vietnam. Can you imagine what it's like to be in the bush of Vietnam and some of the crazy things that they saw? And that's been locked up in his head for 40 years. 50 years. Because your young 18-year-old kid slept out there. I don't know how you keep that and not be, you know.
You ever hold something in your hand that's not heavy, but you hold it there long enough, it gets really heavy?
Love it.
That's the little piece that he's carrying. And over time, it's got heavier and heavier and heavier.
If you're able to, you might be driving in your car, but I would say just simply hold your arm out on the side of your arm, shoulder level. You know, Craig, what's the longest you ever done a plank?
43 minutes and 27 seconds.
Good Lord, dude, that's a long time. Because I'm gonna argue. I'm doing this right now, and my arm's already starting to get a little bit heavy.
Well, Craig hadn't eaten as many donuts as I've had.
He's in shape. I'm not going to lie. He's absolutely in shape. But if you're doing this and you're in your office, just feel that arm starting to get heavy, because mine's starting to get heavy, right? You can't hold it out there and just think it's just going to be locked in and it's not going to have weight to it. One little pebble, I got nothing in my hand, you know? So, yeah. Use mental health services. I love it. You know, find your department offered. You know, people are starting to use their EAP. Do you remember what EAP is?
I do.
Yeah,
I've used it.
Right, referred to it. You know, it's something that's starting to improve. Maintain ties with your agency. I thought that was kind of cool. Auxiliary or special duty work. Craig, I think this man can check that box. Right.
Yep.
What kind of things are you doing with that? I'm curious to talk about that and what that's done for you.
Auxiliary work?
Yeah. Well, special duty work. I mean, you said you're in schools, right?
Yeah.
Maintain ties.
I stayed on as a reserve police officer, and I work in the elementary school.
Yep.
So, and that's the age of children who still think police officers are cool.
Yeah.
So, you know, it used to be high five, but in the time of COVID, you know, it's bump elbows or kick the feet or something like that. You know, give me 5 on the foot. That's my therapy. You know, I've got a group of them that I see every day when they come to school, and I get hugged from them.
Yeah.
You know, and they think it's cool.
Yeah.
You know, that's my therapy.
And you know what's funny, Craig? Are you noticing? I wonder how many people are actually listening to that, and what you're thinking about that as far as you said his elementary school is where your resource officer.
Craig's daughter used to be one of my huggers. She did.
I believe that.
She'd come up and give me a hug.
I believe that without a doubt. But I'm curious, Craig. Do you think that people would have thought that to be the case, that police are still cool in the eyes of kids?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
Because I wonder, we'll get into some societal things, and I don't know what we're going to do with that in a couple of days. But you know, there has been some change in the way the police are viewed, and it's refreshing. I think you're right. I mean, I guess my kids just didn't have. Well, that's not true. No, in the Cub Scout days, yeah, we had police officers and fire. You know, they love to fire people. You know, I just remember as a kid, you know, I mean, it was always, you know, having a badge and a gun and a truck, and you know, playing cowboys and Indians and police officers, and you know, I always wanted to do that.
Sure.
And that still exists today. And I guess I'm just spending a minute in my brain.
You know, it's
kind of refreshing that's the case.
You know, one of my things in the elementary school as well, you know, dealing with children of that age, is to give them a positive experience with a law enforcement officer.
Yes.
You know, they carry it as a kid, you know, that, well, Officer Lowrance was my SRO. And, you know, they had a positive experience with it, because a lot of children don't have positive experience with law enforcement. You know, there's children there that are in domestic violence situations with their parents.
Mm-hmm.
They're the innocent party. They have no way to escape it. You know, what do they see? They see the police officer come up and take their mom away or their dad away.
I was just thinking that.
And the impact that has on them.
You know,
or truancy type situations. So, you know, if I can make a change with the children in the school and a positive influence with them, you know, interacting with them, I mean, it'd be crazy. It'd be silly. It doesn't matter.
And it's funny that I would bet that has, like, as you said, that's your medicine. That has a positive impact on your own head.
Sure, it does.
And interacting in that positivity.
That's the good things that you get to see.
Right? Say that again.
That's the good things you get to see.
Because I remember saying probably about 2 or 3 days ago, your wife's kind of like, you see the negative things. What's up with that?
Yeah.
We need to balance that out a little bit because the good are out there. Listen, we need to wrap up. We're going to come back and finish the mental health thing and get into, some changes and whatnot. So appreciate you guys listening. We are rocking and rolling. Still have a lot to cover. Mr. Chris Lawrence, I am Lowrance. Did I just do it?
You'll get it
I
right
get
by
it.
week
I
7.
just did it, didn't it? All right, man. Guys, you have a great evening. We're going to see you tomorrow on Tuesday with Mr. Chris Lowrance and policing and mental health. Take care. Have a good evening.